Hello, my name is Sheila and I would like to welcome you to my podcast All About You. I love to listen to podcasts and especially conversations with famous people. However, I think everyone has a story to tell. Maybe a place you have visited, a hobby you enjoy, or anything that you feel would be of interest. I want to have conversations with lots of different people and hear their stories. So if you have a story to tell, please contact me on my email allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com. This morning I'm here for another podcast all about you, and my guest today is Karen. Karen is from Ireland and I've known Karen for about 2 years now, and we met when I joined her Sunny Singers Choir, which she does in the Mulligan's pub in Valencia. So Karen, welcome to All About You podcast.
Thank you very much, Sheila. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you. Okay, so Karen, what's your story?
Well, I was going to talk to you a little bit about the time that I spent in Korea, because for me, it was a big part of my life, and it was something that developed my personality a lot. And I suppose for your listeners, I want to kind of convey the importance of travel and traveling to explore who you are, who your personality is, and traveling alone, I think.
I mean, I agree. Travel, I think, is the biggest education you can have. I'm not brave enough to travel on my own. I'm okay getting on a plane knowing I'm going to go to the other end and what's going to happen, but to actually travel as a single woman, no. So anybody who has done that, amazing.
Well, I think I haven't travelled a lot by myself, but anywhere I went by myself, or any time I did anything by myself, it gave me this enormous sense of independence and allowed me, I suppose, to do things that I wanted to do that maybe I hadn't thought about before, or maybe as well because my personality is very much like going with the flow, like doing whatever other people are doing or other people want to do. So then when I was traveling independently, it made me feel like I had my own choices. I could make my own decisions.
Right, okay, so that put you in the driving seat.
Yeah.
So where did your love of travel come from? Was it from when you were a child, or?
I'm actually not really sure about that. So when I was younger, we used to go on holidays every year, once a year for a week or 2 weeks, but we kind of always went to different parts of Ireland. So we didn't really go abroad that much. And I'm actually not really sure what made me want to travel then later. I suppose maybe it had become a bit of a thing that when people finished university, they went traveling for a year or 2 years, and a lot of people were doing it. A lot of people in Ireland were going to Australia, especially because we were able to get this visa between Ireland and Australia quite easily. So I suppose a lot of people were doing that. And yeah, I can't think of a specific reason why I wanted to go anywhere. But I suppose with Korea, I'd finished university, and then I was working in jobs that were kind of mediocre, kind of a bit mundane, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I went to a jobs fair, and I happened to see this opportunity in Korea, and without thinking about it a lot, I had applied for it, and I got the position, and that was it. Like within a few weeks, I was going to Korea.
Wow. So you studied to be a teacher at university?
No, I studied business studies and tourism at university. But once you have a degree, you can do a short course that prepares you to teach English. And with that the qualification from that short course, you can teach in these, they're private language schools in Korea. Now, actually, I'm not sure if that's enough these days, but back at the time when I was doing that, it was enough. So yeah, I went to Korea really without any teaching experience or anything like that. It was brave or ridiculous, I don't know.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah, I went.
So what was your original plan then? If you were in university studying business and tourism, what was your plan once you finished university?
I wanted to work in tourism. I loved tourism and I still love tourism. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do exactly, but I liked the industry. I just was really attracted to it, even though I didn't have much experience with it, as in I'd never done work experience or had any kind of experience with the travel industry before. But yeah, I was just really drawn to this industry because I felt like it's like a happy industry. I had thought about other things like psychology. That was another thing that I was interested in, but I thought, oh, I don't know, would that be too heavy, and would I be able to switch off when I come home from work? Whereas tourism seemed like much more happy, appealing industry to me.
So you talk about holidays, hotels, airlines,
Yeah.
experiences, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, after my time in Korea, I came back to Dublin and I worked in tourism for a couple of years then, and I loved it. And yeah, it's definitely an industry that I would go back to work in. I really liked it.
So when you went to Korea, had you got a school organised to go and work in with accommodation and everything?
Yes, I did. So this company that I had seen and spoken to at the jobs fair, they organised jobs and accommodation and everything. So and they organised the course that I needed to do before I went, and it was kind of an all-rounder company. So they set me up with I had to interview for different jobs and so on, but I think actually it was the first job that I interviewed for and I got the job. Like really, I suppose in Korea they want so many teachers, they need so many teachers. I don't think it's really that difficult to get a job out there. They're really looking for people that are willing to make that move and to go to a country that they're unfamiliar with. So it wasn't really that difficult, although I did have a few interviews for that one job that I ended up getting. There was actually a couple of Irish and English people working in the school that I was going to, so I got to speak to them on the phone before I went, and that gave me a bit of comfort to know that there were other people there that kind of had the same background as me, and they gave me some tips and so on before I arrived.
So why is the demand in Korea so high? I mean, now, most students at university, if they have the ability and the funds, will take a gap year out and do different things. But I mean, I guess we're going back to what sort of year now? When
it was 2005, 2006 I went to Korea. I think they understand the importance of English.
For the global market, that type of thing.
Yeah, and like a lot of Korea's industry was growing a lot at the time. The big companies like Hyundai and Samsung and all those ones that were... and to work in those companies you needed to be able to speak English because they're so international, and really everybody in Korea wanted to work in those companies because they were good employers, they were steady jobs, so the importance of English was really highlighted for them. And I think also maybe a little bit like in Spain, it was a cultural thing where they have to learn English, it's expected of them. If your family have enough money, everybody's going to go to a private language school. And also in Korea, they study a lot from early in the morning until very, very late at night. I had never seen anything like it before, but some of the private language schools were open until midnight. There was so much pressure on them to have a good level of English.
So were the children learning in school as well English, or was it just purely at the academies and language schools?
No, they were studying English at school as well, but I suppose like here in Spain, for extra tuition and so on, they would come
and then they'll get native speakers in academies, whereas in schools it's probably not taught by native speakers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and we had actually the school that I worked in, it was called a Hagwon, and it's like a private school, but we had kids that came in the morning time. So before they started going to primary school, they came to us in the morning from like 9 o'clock until 2 o'clock in the day or something every day. These little kids that were between the ages of 3 and maybe 6, So they were with us all the time, and their level of English by the end of the year was amazing. Like, they were able to have conversations with you and everything. And then we had other kids that came in the afternoon. So they had finished school, then they came into us in the afternoon. They had like maybe an hour or 2 hours of English. And then later in the evening, you'd have the older teenagers and so on. So it was a bit like that.
It's interesting you saying that, because you and I, we're both living in Valencia in Spain. We're both having Spanish lessons. Although we're living here and speaking Spanish every day, we still need to study the grammar and everything.
Yeah.
And I so understand how difficult it is to learn another language as an adult. Whereas kids, they're like sponges.
Yeah.
So the fact that they are having these intensive classes sort of 5 days a week, and they're absorbing it, whereas we don't tend to absorb it. We have to study it to get it in our brains.
Yeah.
So since living here, I so understand that kids just pick up a second language far easier, and in a rather than studying with books, they're doing it with games and play and TV and things. So
it's a much more natural way to learn.
Exactly.
And they're amazing. Like the little kids, as you said, they pick it up so quickly. I actually studied Montessori a few years ago,
right.
And the whole thinking behind this method of teaching is that kids from when they're born until they're about 6 years old, they have optimal learning capabilities at that time, and between the ages of 3 and 6 in particular for language learning and so on. And it's so obvious, it's so clear to me that if kids are studying a second language at that time, a couple of different things: their pronunciation usually is much better, their fluency is much better, and they just get the structure of the language. They don't have to study sentence structures or anything. It's a more natural way of learning for them.
I mean, if you think, when we learnt English, we were never given a grammar book. We learnt cat, mat, blue, ball, and that's how we learn. But when we go to formal learning now, here's the book, Unit 1, Chapter 1. So, So you went to Korea.
Yes.
Had you been to Korea before? No?
No, I had never been to Korea. And actually, I knew nothing really about Korea, I have to say. When I look back, I actually get a bit panicky about the idea that I was going to Korea knowing so little about the country. In fact, I remember one day being at work, and I was working at a bank at the time, and I remember one of the customers coming in and saying, wow, so you're going off to Korea next week or whatever, are you going to North or South Korea? And I was like, oh, I didn't even know there was a North or South Korea at the time. And luckily, I guessed that I was going to South Korea, and the customer was saying, oh, look, you're going to South Korea, you wouldn't want to be going to North Korea. But then I had to go home and look up what the man was talking about. Like, that was how little I knew about Korea at the time when I was going. And as I said, it happened so quickly, that I had gone to this job fair, and literally a few weeks later I was on the plane to Korea.
So had you signed a contract for a year or 2 years?
For a year. I'd signed a contract for a year. So I went, I think it was maybe around May that I went. And I was going to be there for the full year. The academic years run a little bit different to our academic years. But so I was there for the full year.
Well, already I think you're incredibly brave.
Well,
I just couldn't see myself signing on the dotted line for a country I'd never been to. And it's not as if it's a 2-hour EasyJet flight back. It's not. You're a fair old distance away on your own, new country.
Yeah,
wow.
But I think when you're young, you don't have as much fear.
I think that's a very valid point, because when we moved to Valencia, the amount of stuff I did, couldn't speak the language, but you just think, right, I need to go and buy a bed, and you go and do it. You need to get the electricity sorted, you just do it. When I look back now, I think I couldn't do that now, but I think you're full of, whether it's bravado, whether it's stupidity or what, you just get on and do it because you've got to get these things organised. But when you look back, and friends of mine, oh my God, I can never move to a foreign country. Well, why not? Oh, well, it's foreign language and food's different. I think, that's exactly why.
Yeah, and I think when you're faced with the problems that you need to solve, you kind of take it on board like any other problem. You have to do this thing, you've got no other choice, so how are you going to do it? And you start maybe working out the way you would with any other problem.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did. I remember sitting on the plane going to Korea and really kind of
It was
being
real.
afraid.
It was real. Yeah.
I won't say I wasn't really afraid, but maybe I was a bit anxious or something. I don't know, but I remember sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, I'm actually the only white person on this plane."
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Everybody was Asian. The food that we got on the plane, I had never had. Well, rice, okay, fair enough, but the flavors and so on were so different to me. That was my first maybe taste of a different culture, like such an extremely different culture.
So that was your baptism of fire, was on the plane, really?
Yeah, that was when I realized, oh my God, this is it. I'm doing it.
Really
this is real.
doing this.
Yeah. And I remember thinking as well, because the company had organised that I'd be picked up at the airport and that I'd be brought to the school and everything. But the emails that I was getting from the person that was picking me up from the airport were one-liners. They were so short. There was no detail. There wasn't anything like, and when I think about that as well, I think, oh my God, like if it was now, or if my daughter was getting that information, I don't think I'd be comfortable letting them just go off, And I feel very thankful actually, because when the man came to the airport to pick me up, he had his wife with him. And I felt like that was really nice, that there was a woman there. I didn't feel intimidated by going off in the car with this random man. Like,
oh my God, that just fills me with terror, as you say, because different cultures. A young, attractive woman on her own, hasn't been to the country. I mean,
so that was nice that she was there. Definitely was very nice. And then, I mean, he took me straight away to the school that I was going to be working in. And one of the funny things, I suppose, was that the school was on, I think, the 5th floor of the building, which maybe is not so unusual in Spain because they have all the high-rise buildings and everything. But coming from Ireland, that was very different because everything's on the ground floor, same as in England. So having a different company on the 2nd, 3rd or 4th floor up was so unusual for me. So getting in the lift, I'd gone up and the doors of the lift opening, and it was an actual school. Like, they had, and things were different. Like they changed their shoes when they went into school because they had, indoor, for hygiene, I suppose, they had indoor shoes and outdoor shoes. And I remember when I went in that day, the little children were so excited to see me because they knew there was a new teacher coming, and they wanted to touch my skin. They thought that it was amazing that I had freckles, the hairs on my arms that they don't have, or they certainly don't have hairs standing up the way I do on my arms. They really wanted to like touch you and hold your hand, and it was actually really nice.
I was going to say that made you feel welcome.
Absolutely. And so interesting to see what they found different about me, that they were so intrigued by my freckles. They kept wanting to pick the freckles or touch them and stuff, and that was amazing. That was really nice. And really with school, I fitted into the school straight away. Like it was my first day teaching was probably quite intimidating because I'd never ever taught in a school before. And I remember my first class going in, they had books, but like I literally had never opened a book or addressed a class before. So that was quite intimidating, and I can't imagine what my classes were like back at the beginning. I don't even want to think about that. But the kids were so respectful, as they are. Like in Korea, it's a very important thing that you're respectful of people that are older than you. And obviously that made my life very, very easy.
It wasn't a baptism of fire then or anything.
No, it was great. They were all very, very good. I have maybe one or two memories of children kind of, acting up, but not really acting up, just being kids, you know. But because they're so respectful, anybody that was acting up was really stood out, I suppose, But no, it was amazing. It was really amazing. The teachers, so in the school, it was always a native teacher paired up with a Korean teacher. So they were all, you know,
So
very
you
nice and
always
helpful and
had two
everything.
teachers in a class?
No, not in the class. But maybe you
Oh, it's
had,
like a mentor when you start at the school?
or they, so the Korean, you shared a class with the teacher. So the Korean teacher would teach them sometimes,
Okay.
and the native teacher would teach them other times.
Oh, right.
So the Korean teachers actually taught them the grammar part of it,
Right.
because they obviously had studied English grammar. So they were teaching them those ins and outs, which suited me absolutely fine. So then it was, our job really was to teach them pronunciation, vocab, try and get them speaking, try and get the fluency going. So it was the perfect balance really for me. I loved it. I didn't have to teach any grammar, which is fine by me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like they had different things like science days where all the parents came, and we did science experiments for them, and we had school tours, and we had lots of different things like that. And they had I think maybe 9 classrooms it was, and each classroom had a different theme. So they had dinosaurs coming out of the walls, and they had spent a lot of money on them. Like, South Korea is a very wealthy country.
So this was a private school then? It wasn't a state-run school?
No, it was a private school, and the area that it was in was quite wealthy. It was a beautiful area, lots of trees. Like, it's such an advanced country technologically. Like the Wi-Fi, the computers, everything was just so amazing.
So you weren't looking around for pens and pencils and coloured pencils for the kids or anything? It was all there, and all the tech?
Yeah, it was amazing. Like the level of the quality, I suppose, was, it was really amazing. But they paid for it. The parents paid for the school, and they had, it wasn't, the school wasn't completely technological. I mean, it was a children's school, so there was a little gym, and they played like regular games that you and I played when we were growing up. The city, I think, it was very well connected. They had the Olympics there a few years beforehand. So the metro system was very, very good. The restaurants were new and modern, and
so it was a good time to be living and working in there after all the benefits that had obviously been opened up because of the Olympics.
Yeah.
So what was your accommodation like then?
Well, the accommodation actually wasn't so advanced, or so I suppose maybe everybody lived in apartments, and I actually taught a few private classes, and some of the houses that I had to go to teach private classes were nice. Like, they were done up very well and everything. The house that we lived in as the teachers, it was free accommodation. It wasn't great. It really wasn't great. For example, I slept on a mattress on the ground. They didn't have a proper bed, which was like in Korea, I suppose, or in Asian countries, they often don't have beds.
Right.
They sleep on mattresses on the ground, or even mats on the ground. So the kitchen was quite basic. It was quite an old apartment. It was quite small. And the bathroom was the weirdest thing for me, because it was a wet room, and I had never been.
Right,
I'd never
come across one. No.
Come across a wet room before, and I thought it was so strange because the washing machine was in the wet room, even though obviously it was being plugged into the wall.
So the electrics and water.
Yeah, I was like, okay, very strange. So that was very weird, but we got used to it, and it was fine. So I shared my house with one of the other teachers, and I actually ended up sharing with 2 teachers, because one of them was there for the first kind of 6 months, I suppose, maybe, that I was there, and then her contract was finished, so she went home, and a new teacher came. So both of the girls that I shared with were from Ireland, and I actually ended up having a really good relationship with both of them. I got on very well with them. I suppose you're working and living together, you kind of find out what makes people tick. And the first girl was a very, very quiet girl. A lot of my memories of her are watching television series together, and maybe eating out in restaurants together, whereas the second girl was a lot more social. So we went out to bars, and we did a lot more social things together.
Karaoke.
We did karaoke. Yes, we did karaoke. I actually loved the karaoke rooms. So they have these...
They have the private rooms, don't they? Yeah.
Yes, they have the private rooms, which again was my first time coming across anything like that. They call them nori bangs, and you can go into them on your own with your friends, whatever it is, and they have all the songs, and I loved them. I loved them. They were so much fun. We did them.
Yeah, we need one in Valencia. We need one in Valencia.
Definitely. I think they would really work in the Western world these days. Yeah, I love them.
So you're happy at the school, you've got a nice environment, the kids are respectful, you're sharing a house with some other girls, you've got a social life going on and all the rest of it. At what point did you think, yeah, okay, I can do this, you know, the year is going to be fine?
Well, actually, I suppose I need to go back a little bit to the beginning, because when I arrived in Korea, although I got on well in school and everything, I was extremely homesick at the beginning. So the first girl that I lived with, she, very soon after I arrived, maybe like 3 weeks after I arrived or something like that, she actually went traveling with her sister around different parts of Asia. So she was gone from the house for maybe a month. And at that time, I was so lonely.
So you were there on your own?
I was there on my own then at that time.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I was just going to work and coming home, and I was by myself at home, and I was so lonely. I didn't want to go home. I wanted to stay in Korea, but I didn't know how to get over this homesickness.
Because you didn't have Skype and Zoom and free WhatsApp then, did we?
No.
So you couldn't hopefully get over it using technology. So
yeah, no, we had to buy phone cards actually to type in this long number of phone card and ring home. And I used to ring home maybe once a week or twice a week or something, but I used to try to not cry when I was on the phone.
I was going to say, did that make it worse, having those weekly calls?
Yeah, well, it was nice to have them and I look forward to them, but I really didn't want my parents to be worried about me.
Yeah, I
didn't want them to think that I wasn't okay because they were so far away and they couldn't do anything to help me.
So you're trying to keep your voice light and everything's good, and in your heart you're thinking, oh God,
it was awful. Yeah, it was so awful. That was quite bad. And actually, but then my sister is kind of straight talker, and she was like, Karen, you need to get up and go and do something, join a club or do something. And at the time, she actually knew somebody that had been in Korea a few years before that, and that girl had been part of a group of people that set up a Gaelic football club in Korea. And I had never played Gaelic football at home in Ireland, and I'd never had any interest in playing Gaelic football. I
didn't even know girls played it.
They do, yeah, they do. Wow. They do. So anyway, I after like a week or two of pondering over this, would I join it or would I even look it up? I did. I got in contact with them, and again, like most people we meet in this world, they were so welcoming and friendly and everything. So I went down and I joined this Gaelic football team, and from the day that I joined the Gaelic football team, that was when my life in Korea changed.
Wow, so thank you, sister.
Thank you, sister. Yeah, exactly.
So what's sister called? Let's give her a shout out.
Linda.
Linda, well done, Linda, for saving the day and getting Karen back on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, Linda's amazing. She's a go-getter, So she was giving me the kick up the ass that I needed, and she's done that many times, so she's a great person. Yeah, when I joined the Gaelic team, one of the beauties of it was that there was people from all over the world. It wasn't only Irish people, because I didn't want to make friends only with Irish people. Like, I had gone to Korea, I suppose, to have a mix. To broaden your horizons. So even though they were all English speakers, they were from all over the place: Canada, Russia, the United States, Austria, the Netherlands. They're from everywhere.
Wow.
So that was a really nice thing for me. And I suppose I was getting to know other cultures that way. But also one of the things as well was the girls played with the boys. And this was also kind of a new thing for me, because I had gone to an all-girls school. So that mix with boys wasn't really, even though I've got 4 brothers, but it wasn't really something that I was used to doing. Yeah. So that was, and I remember the first day that I was there training, I had brought a bottle of water and so on, and then we were out training, doing whatever we were doing. We went to get a drink of water, and one of the boys picked up my bottle of water and just opened it and took a drink out of it and kind of passed it around. And I was, at the beginning, I was horrified. I was like, what? But actually, that's what everybody was doing. And I copped that on very quickly, that was just like what they did. And that was kind of the sense of community and that kind of thing there. That was, everybody was sharing. And yeah, so that was great. The Gaelic football was great. And from that, I met one girl, her name is Caroline, and she's from the west of Ireland. And she went to Korea with another girl called Fiona, also from the west. And when I was there, I was very close with those two girls. And since then, I've been very close with those two girls. So we're all, the two girls are back living in Ireland now. We're in contact all the time.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
So decades later, you're still maintaining the friendship.
Yeah. And actually, those two girls, their friendship, it's been so important for me. Like, they've been the best friends that anybody could want, you know. So I really am so grateful for my time in Korea that I met those two girls. They've been great. And also, I met my husband.
Way! Shout out to Fiona.
Yeah, so
how did you meet Fiona then?
Well, actually playing Gaelic football.
Oh,
so
right, okay.
It was a few weeks later, I suppose. I had been playing with the group that I was with for a good while, and then summer came, and we were Fiona had been living in China, but he was in Korea. He had lived in Korea previous to that because he went to Korea for the World Cup. So when he got the opportunity to go back to Korea to cover classes for one of his friends who needed to go to Ireland, and anyway, he was there for a short period of time. And during that time, he was playing football, and we were having a fundraiser night because there's a Gaelic tournament that happens for all of the teams around Asia, and every year they meet in one of the cities and they have this Gaelic tournament. So we were trying to raise money for this Gaelic tournament, and we were out doing ridiculous things like giving people massages for €2 and karaoke and lots of different things like that. But anyway, I met Fiona in one of the bars called the Rocky Mountain Tavern.
Oh, that doesn't sound very Korean.
No, it was Canadian. It was in there's an area in Korea called Itaewon, and it's full of kind of Western bars because there's an American army base there.
Oh, right, so it's a bit of a melting pot for the non-locals as such.
Yeah, exactly. So, I met Fiona in the Rocky Mountain Tavern, and we hit it off, and we've been together ever since.
Wow. So again, with Fiona being in Korea to help a friend out to cover some classes because he was due to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
The fundraiser. So I'm a great one in believing meeting your partner, the stars aligned. Yeah. Lots of things have to slot into place for you two to be in the same place at the right time. I'm a great believer in that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. When you think back of what could have happened or what...
Yeah, you'd gone left, he'd gone right, and this never would have happened. So you enjoyed your time in Korea, you then met Fiona.
Yes.
And what happened when you came to the end of your year's contract?
At the end of my year's contract, I actually went home for a few weeks. So I had a plan to meet up with one of my friends, and we were going to go to Australia together. So I went home, I think just because it was the end of my contract and I was going home to see my family for a couple of weeks or something. And then I went back out to play in this Gaelic tournament that was happening. And then I was meeting up with my friend. We were going to travel around Asia a little bit and then go to Australia. So that was what we did. I went back to Ireland for a few weeks. Then I went back to China to play in this tournament, which Fiona was going to be at. I travelled with my friend and Fiona for a couple of weeks in Asia, and then myself and my friend Lockie went to Australia, and Fiona went back to Ireland. So we were separated for about 6 months, and that was quite difficult actually. But after we had finished travelling in Asia, Fiona and I went back to Korea to work in an English teaching camp for a month, and my friend Lockie went to Australia. So, and when we were teaching in this camp, we actually got in a little bit of trouble because...
Is this suitable for the podcast, Karen?
Well...
You decide.
We had been teaching under the wrong visa.
Okay.
So we were teaching, we had tourist visas.
Right.
And we were teaching, and some disgruntled employees from the camp that they were teaching with illegal teachers and so on. And when we were going to the airport to leave, we had finished the camp and everything, and we were leaving we were leaving Korea, and we got stopped at the airport.
By someone in a uniform?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and well, actually, I got through, and Fiona got stopped because Fiona had worked at other camps with them. This was the first one that I'd ever worked at. So, but I was so in love with Fiona, I went back, and then both of us got deported from Korea.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a nasty finish because we hadn't, when we were working under the wrong visa, we didn't know that at the time. It wasn't something that we it wasn't something that we willingly did wrong, you know. So I'm trying to think now. We had to stay in the interrogation room in the airport.
This is a
for
bit
little
real.
while. Yeah, and then we were allowed to go back into Korea. I can't remember exactly why we went back into Seoul, but I think maybe we were going back to get our things, even though we would have had our things. I actually can't remember why exactly. But when we went back into Seoul, we were trying to get in contact with our other friends that had worked at the camp to tell them what the situation was. And then we had to report to a police station the following day or something like this. But I was very naive to the situation because I thought, oh well, we're leaving Korea anyway, so they'll just put us on a plane and we'll have to leave or whatever, you know. But actually, when we went to the police station, they were interviewing us or interrogating us quite a bit to try to find out information about the camp.
Oh my God.
And then they put us into separate cells.
Oh my God. I mean, I have no idea how you must have been feeling. Terrified.
Yeah, I was terrified. Yeah, I really was terrified. And we had to put on clothes that were like jail clothes.
Right, so you lost completely your identity.
Absolutely, yeah. So that was actually quite scary, even though we hadn't done anything wrong. So in the back of my mind, I knew that there wasn't going to be anything. But you hear these horror stories about people being in prisons in different places for years and years. But anyway, that wasn't the case. But so we were in this holding cell for about 24 hours. And then Fiona got taken to the airport to go to his flight to Ireland, and
that was the end of that situation. Nothing.
That was the end of that situation. Yeah, and actually,
they just stamped your passport and said you're not coming back, basically.
Yeah, and actually, the policeman that was with me didn't stamp my passport. I think they knew that we weren't bad people, we hadn't done anything wrong, and. Yeah, so he didn't actually stamp, and Fiona didn't have his passport stamped either. I think they wanted to kind of maybe scare us more than anything really. But yeah, I remember like when I went to the airport, I didn't have my passport. They had my passport.
So they were making sure, double sure, you were actually getting on a plane and not going anywhere else and scooting back in the country. Yeah.
And then when my flight was from Seoul to Singapore, I think, and then Singapore to Sydney. So when I was on the plane, when we were in Singapore, I suppose we were just about to get off the plane. I had to wait to be the last person to get off the plane, and then the flight attendant gave me my passport. They had my passport then. So yeah, then I went, somebody actually met me off the plane and took me in Singapore airport to get my ticket to go to Australia. So I went with that person, and then once I had my ticket to go to Australia, they just left me. And I was like looking around myself going, am I by myself now? Am I
yeah,
free?
I mean, am I a free person? Am I as guilty as charged? I mean, not the ending you really would want to finish your year in Korea.
No, definitely not. And I was really, really upset at the time, obviously when we were in the holding cell and stuff. And afterwards I was quite upset, especially because I wasn't, okay, I was with my friend Lockie, but you know, I really wanted to be with Fionn, or I wanted to be with my family.
Yes.
So yeah,
you just need that stability of, I'm okay, you know, I've got
Yeah.
someone supporting me. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, so I was really upset at the time, but thankfully I feel okay about the whole situation now. I suppose it was really good after I got out to be able to speak to Fionn about talk through things and why it happened and all that kind of stuff, you know.
I mean, that's a very big thing to have to go through as sort of a newly joined couple. I mean, you weren't married at that point, so the relationship was quite new.
Yeah.
Having to face something that, touch wood, none of us, or very few of us, will ever have to face in our lifetime.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, God. I mean, how young were you? What age were you when all this was happening?
I was 24.
Yeah, so, you know, even for people a lot of older, I mean, that would have been horrendous, I would have thought.
Yeah.
So you haven't been back to Korea since then?
No, we haven't been back. I suppose at the beginning we weren't sure if we were going to be allowed back in or not. Now, it hasn't in any way tarnished my memories of Korea. Like, I love Korea. I love Koreans. I have to say, I would go back to Korea in the morning. I love it so much. I think it's a great country. I think the people are fantastic. So I would definitely go back. And I think for me, at the time when I was there, it was my first experience of my own freedom and my own independence and so on. I really feel like my personality developed, my character developed so much when I was there. So for that reason, Korea has a very special place in my heart.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, for you left university, you did a couple of jobs, and then, you know, you took this teaching position in a country far, far away.
Yeah.
You know, you'd never been to the country before. Everything was organised for you. You had one-line emails basically keeping you informed. And then to go through, you know, the homesickness, meeting new people, then getting out there after encouragement from your sister and everything. I mean, that's one hell of an adventure, Karen.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was really great. And also when I was there, because it's so close to other Asian countries, I had the opportunity to I went to Japan for the New Year. I went also by myself on that trip, which was really nice. I got to go to China. My sister actually and her now husband came to visit us in Korea for a week, and then we went to Beijing for a little while, and I got to go to Singapore and Hong Kong. So I really got to travel a lot when I was there as well, and I got to do that by myself, which I think was I loved it. I thought it was great.
Well, I think that is an absolutely brilliant story. The highs and lows of going to the other side of the world and not really knowing what you're letting yourself in for, and the experiences you had, the good, leaving Korea, not quite the exit you had probably planned with Fiona, but you've lived to tell the tale. Yes. Karen, thank you so much. That's been absolutely fascinating, and there's so much there I didn't know. That's absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much, and thank you for being on the All About You podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
I hope you have enjoyed the conversation. Don't forget, if you have a story you would like to tell, please get in touch. My email address is allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com, and thank you for listening.